Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Abroad Show. It's Monday, the 13th of May, 2024. We are here talking about all things Carlton after a solid win in round 9. I've got Ed with me. Ed, good evening, mate.
Good evening, Terry. How are you?
Good. Always good after a win, a hard-fought win.
Yeah, indeed it was. Indeed it was. I think I'm emotionally recovered from the last 15 minutes now.
Yeah. I actually just finished watching the replay for the third time because I just wanted to dial in on the fourth quarter and probably more specifically the last 10 minutes. We'll get to it in a minute, but isn't it fascinating how well you can seemingly play for 3.5 quarters and then how quickly it can disappear?
Yeah, I think that's been the tale of us this year. It's the difference between how well and how good we look when we're playing well, and then how vulnerable we look when we're playing poorly and the opposition has momentum. I have watched the full replay of the game, but I will admit after that last quarter, I just went home and treated myself to the first quarter again. And then I turned it off and went to bed. And I was like, okay, now I feel a bit better. But the difference is stark. And really, I think, I'm probably stating the obvious here, but like we have to address that gap and that ability to just batten down the hatches when we're not playing well, or when the opposition has that momentum.
Yeah, no doubt. We're going to get stuck right into it. We are brought to you guys by Cannoleria. They are a subsidiary of That's Amore Cheese, by the way, if you're not aware. So thank you very much for your support. Let's begin, Ed, because there's going to be a lot to come out of this game, I think. Good and bad. Ladies and gents,
you saw all sides of us, so there's a lot to dissect.
Yeah. Ladies and gents in the chat, those of you watching along at home, give us one sentence to give us your reflection of round 9. And Ed, let's get cracking. So let's unpack it. What happened?
Well, I mean, if you're giving me the pleasure of speaking about the first quarter, I just thought that all the things that we've been wanting to see addressed were addressed all at once. I think we should start by talking about the quality of the defense and how well they held up under pressure. And I did rewatch that first quarter. I've watched it twice now, and something which is really clear to me is the ball was going inside Melbourne's attacking 50, and it was going in pretty deep at times, and it was going in with repeat entries. Just the ability of the defense to stay calm, find that outlet handball, slam it on the boot when they needed to, and also look to try and find space and get a nice short pass out of defense. I was just super impressed with Cincotta and the work that he did back there. I thought he's been a great addition since he's come back in. McGovern, just that steady read of the ball in flight was really great to have back there. And then we were getting back in numbers that I haven't seen us get back in all year. People like Blake Acres, which he's always done, but just always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. And it was really refreshing to see the defense look that solid. That was my first takeaway from that first quarter.
Yeah. I didn't feel, I mean, we've probably seen more exciting first quarters or quarters in general, more, higher scoring quarters. I didn't feel like that first quarter was not something that we can sustain. Maybe the opposition not scoring it's almost impossible consistently. But I thought the way in which we controlled the tempo of the game, thought the way in which we thought our way through how we moved the ball from one end to the other. I mean, we speak how many times in the last, forever really, about the way we kick the footy. All those elements seem to come together, and feel like that is the template. When we drop off with the standards and we start, not playing as well, like that is now the template for the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you look at the 3 best quarters of the season, which is the third quarter against Brisbane, the third quarter against GWS, and then the first quarter against Melbourne. And those first 2 quarters that I mentioned then, they feel really manic. I mean, we kick 6 or 7 goals, but we're almost not in control. It's just everything's clicking, and the excitement and the emotion is all there. Uh, Friday's first quarter it had this ruthless professionalism about it. We went fast when we needed to. We slowed down when we needed to. And just some of the goals, I mean, Terry, you must be sick to death of me talking about how we enter the forward line. But when you think about the way Ollie Hollands set up Jack Martin, when you think about the patience that was shown before De Koning marked the ball, that's what we've been asking for. And like you said, it felt really sustainable. And truth be told, we did sustain it for 2.5 quarters. So that was really pleasing.
There was a moment in the first, so I think for our first 4 goals, the entries were deep the way that we had been speaking about. Then the 5th one, which was De Koning, bit more shallow, but I think because we had established that territory going inside 50 early on and converted our chances, we sort of got the respect from the Melbourne defence. Then, that entry to De Koning, which he marked, I remember saying at the time, like, oh, nah, that one's way too shallow, but he marks it. That just summed it up. And I don't think the other thing was, like, there's no better pressure than scoreboard pressure. So to take your opportunities, I mean, Pito lining up for goal, taking his opportunity, and I think De Koning, they were the two where I said to myself, they're ones that I don't think we have been getting all year, and so to set the game up that way. And we'll get to the fourth quarter shortly, but for all that happened in the fourth, we actually got rewarded for what we had done early in the game, which was pleasing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that scoreboard pressure comment, it's so accurate, because let's say we'd kick 2 goals 3 and, we'd just let one of those forward entries turn into a goal for them, and it's 1 goal 6. It's the same quarter visually, but 9 points up, it just feels like a completely different game. And the shape that creates to the second and the third quarter would have been pretty different as to what happens because we were 5 goals up. So it's really simple, but we've just got to try it. We've got to kick straight. We've got to kick the ones we should kick. Yeah. We've got to hope that there's a few that perhaps we don't think will be kicked that do get kicked. I mean, most people, when Pito were coming in, I was just like, oh, I hope this goes anywhere near the goals. In fact, best result is that it goes to the goal square. And he kicked it, and then he sort of just strutted off like, yeah, I'll do that every day type thing. So, I mean, he's in great form, Pito. So it's just things are rolling his way, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. What else came up for you in this game? Was there a point where you felt that we weren't in control? I mean, obviously there was towards the end. So when did it feel like that for you? When did it feel like it was no longer on our terms?
Yeah, I thought we were hovering around that sort of 30, that it was like just under or just over 5 goal lead for the better part of quarter. Every now and then we'd jag it out to sort of that 38 point margin. And I felt like, to use, I guess, a running term, there was almost that lacquer band. And once it had snapped to the low 20s, once they got that goal that put them 22 points up, us 22 points up rather than 28, that's when I sort of thought, okay, the scoreboard pressure now that we're feeling is going to make this last quarter pretty tense. Something I thought was really impressive, though, and gave me a lot of heart, even though we weren't able to do this in the last quarter, is that it's not like they weren't coming the whole time. They definitely made a little run at us in both the second and the third quarter that we were able to respond to. And we were able to respond to it not only with the way we played, but with scoreboard pressure. They'd get a goal and then we get one back. And I felt like that was so important. It's something we weren't able to do against Geelong and against Collingwood. So just that ability to keep fighting against the momentum. Of course, it didn't happen in that last quarter, but it did in the second and third.
Yeah. No, for sure. I feel like I've watched teams do what we did to Melbourne do to us a lot in the past. I actually think that game was not dissimilar to the one we played against them when we lost in round 2, 2020, lockdown. I think they might have got out to a 7-goal lead though, and then we pegged it back and lost by a kick or whatever it was.
Yeah, I remember it at Marvel, and there was no one there, was there? It was empty.
No one there.
If it had gone for another 2 minutes, we might have won. And I actually had this. I had this reflection on the way home, because I knew that the talk would be, we probably, Carlton would have deserved to lose. They let them back in and whatnot. If the shoe had been on the other foot, if we had let them get out to a 5-goal lead and then hunted them down, we would probably be saying to ourselves, well, we didn't deserve to win anyway. How can you deserve to win if you let them get out to a 5-goal win, 5-goal lead? So taking it from that perspective, I think we've got to be super proud of the fact that we started well, established a lead that we were able to hold on to. Yes, by the skin of our teeth, but you got to play 4 quarters, and we were on from the start.
Yeah. I took a few notes down just now as I watched the fourth quarter. I didn't feel like we had lost control of the game. I'll run you through the series of events. So we're up 26 with 10 minutes to go. Boyd pins Oliver in the middle of the ground. And I'm like, wow, like this is just, it's brilliant. So there's 10 minutes to go. I think it was 9:55. They score off a turnover over the top, Petrarca over the top to Van Rooyen, 8:50 to go. Then the tackle on Brody Kemp happens. Maybe I'll pause for a second. I want to highlight something there. Brian Taylor says, that is a classic case of a player deliberately driving his head into the ground. I don't think Brian understands the trickle effect that had. Did you see the headline about that? And like Kemp was labeled as like an AFL faker.
Yeah, I think that's just the media cycle these days is so vicious. And if you do something on, well, I was going to say on a Friday night, but this was a Thursday night. If you do it in that standalone game and that standalone game is close, it just gets highlighted and magnified. There would have been multiple, let's call it 15 to 20 incidents where players have tried to put something on in order to get a free kick. Yes, Kemp did what he had to do to make sure the umpire saw what would have earned him a free kick. But, I look back to the Cowan one where Cowan hit Neil Bullen and it went downfield and they got a goal out of it. Okay, Cowan was probably pretty silly to do it, but geez, did Neil Bullen put it on or what? So it's just people just want something to talk about. And I think that was pretty unfair on Brody. And I hope it's been an okay week for him. And I hope it's one of those things that just gets forgotten about in time.
Hope so. Yeah, because it can be a really fine line. And also to label someone like that takes a while to get that can, once that sticks, it takes a while to remove itself in general AFL media circles.
Yeah, look, BT, I've always found BT entertaining and good fun, but the reality is his bias against Carlton and to Collingwood is it's no longer subtle. And I think it was pretty obvious that he wanted us to lose on Thursday night. And it's once you've got that in your head, you're just going to find whatever narrative suits that. Oh, Carlton are cheating, which is, God, we've heard that so much this year. Carlton and the umpires, which is just I could do a whole show on that, to be honest. But it was an incident where you look at it and you think, yep, he definitely milked that. But there's plenty of those on every team, every game.
Petra, I'm with you. It was barracking. That's what it was. It was barracking. That's exactly how I felt about it when I heard it again. I didn't realize how he had said it in the moment until I watched it again and again. But anyway, so that happens. So we're up 19 points with 5 minutes 30 to go. Daniel Turner gets pinned. 5 minutes and 4 seconds to go. Still in control. Then I think this is where the fear started kicking in. When Viney does the tap to Windsor, the Wayne Harms-esque goal, 3:58 to go. Then Petrarca gets one, I think, and then was gone. Then at that point, so it was really that last 5, 6, let's call it 7 minutes where it really went away. So did you look at that as a lack of, did we run out of legs, or did you look at it as we just didn't protect the game or didn't manage the game as well as what we could?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways to look at it. That it's funny that you say that moment with Windsor and Viney tapping it back in is when you got a little bit panicky, because that was the same for me. It sort of had this element of, well, if we go down, that'll be the goal that they'll say Carlton didn't kill that ball, and that'll be the story that we were lazy and didn't kill that ball. And it, by the way, we were that wasn't even close to being anything but what it was. It was a goal. The whole ball was definitely not over the line. I think the way that I see it is when teams roll the dice and they want to score quickly in a scenario like that, 20 points down, 5 minutes to go, they're going to put all their eggs in the basket of we need people on attacking for a side of stoppages. We need people to run forward whenever they can. A really good professional team, which is what we want to be, will punish a team for only running forward. All
Yeah.
all it would have taken is one turnover. And then because they've biased numbers forward, we should also have numbers forward. And one goal there completely destroys not only the scoreboard, but it destroys that mindset of, hey, let's all run forward, which is what they had. Because we couldn't stop that, not only was the scoreboard ticking over for them, but their confidence was growing. They were all like, well, this is working. Let's keep running in waves forward. And we just didn't have an answer for it. So it almost takes, I mean, not necessarily an individual piece of brilliance, but just one moment. Somebody intercepting a mark, somebody catching someone holding the ball, turning it over, and then we punish them on the turnover. And it's like, well, you tried that. It hasn't worked. And now the game's done. We just couldn't find that moment. We just couldn't find it until about the last 10 seconds when, Newman and Cripps together take down Petrarca. Yeah, it took two of them, but we just needed a moment like that.
I was sitting with my brother and my sister. My brother was next to me. My sister was next to him. And just before that stoppage, before Cripps and Newman tackle Petrarca, the ball spills out and it goes forward. We actually forced maybe a boundary throw in. As that ball spilt out, like I was still calm but a little bit nervous. As that ball spilt out, I watched the two of them just collectively just start groaning and shaking like, oh my God, it's about to happen. And then you get that stoppage and then my mind goes back a week earlier. I mean,
Yep.
Game in the balance, Nick Dacos gets free, kicks the goal. So from that point of view, it was interesting to see how much the game will continue to test you on what you need to figure out again and again until you figure it out. So I was pleased that we were able to wrap it up, get the tackle, execute, finish the game off. Unnecessary stress moving forward, but
Yeah.
I mean, you take the win and away we go.
Yeah, and look, I definitely wasn't as calm about it as it was happening, but I thought to myself, well, this is great. We got burnt in this almost identical situation last week, a
Yep.
stoppage where we weren't tight enough. Let's see if we've got better. Let's see if we've learned. And now I know Dacos was pretty good last Friday night, but I reckon Petrarca was better on Thursday, so it was a bigger test. And we passed the test. Everyone got a man and everyone was tight and we made it work. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be pretty all the time. It just has to be better. And it was better than the week before. So I don't know what more you can ask.
Yeah. I mean, I had a look I just found a stat about the fourth quarter or about the pressure, the pressure gauge. I don't exactly know how it's calculated, but that fourth quarter, our pressure rating was 201, which is in that red zone elite.
It's right up there, yeah.
The first quarter was 200. The third quarter was 209. Our best quarter, interestingly enough, with our pressure rating is 221, and that was in quarter one against the Tigers in round one. So, yeah, I mean, I was still trying to wrap my brain around, was that a fitness thing or was that just a poor execution thing in that fourth quarter? And I think you're right. You get a turnover, you punish a turnover in that fourth quarter, and you ice the game.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the timing of the scoring, and it's hard to. I had to almost double check this when I looked at it, but they kick 3 late goals, and they're the goals that obviously bring them within a point. But the first of those 3 late goals, the Caleb Windsor one, that was at the 25-minute mark. That's pretty late in the quarter. That means for the first 25 minutes, we effectively held it at a goal each. So imagine if at the 25-minute mark, we don't concede that goal, and then we manage to get that turnover that I'm speaking of. We potentially win this game by 4 goals plus.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a pretty good lesson that 20 points up with 25 minutes into the last quarter, it actually isn't enough. Not in this day and age. Not with 6-6-6 and not with teams that know how to that they've practiced game scenarios. That they would have practiced that all or nothing scenario. and it worked really well for them.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's 4 games in a row now against top 4 quality opposition, all of which have been in form. I know the Giants were definitely in form when we played them. Geelong undefeated when we played them. The Pies had started to find a little bit of their form, maybe not at their best, but definitely, it's always a great game. And then the D's going into the game had just beaten the Cats the week before and defensively shut them down and the like. So what do you make of that? Do you think it sharpens us up, or do you think it's just the fixture and that's just the way it goes?
Look, I mean, it is just a fixture, isn't it? Like we had a pretty decent first 5 weeks, you'd say.
Mm,
And it just so happens that probably the teams that you wouldn't have thought would be in the form they are when you looked at the season at the start, Sydney and Geelong, the form that when we had to play them, you probably wouldn't have thought, particularly Geelong, that they'd be playing what they did. I mean, I think you we've been in every game. We actually haven't had a bad loss. Like it, I could be dreaming here, but it's not inconceivable that we actually could be 8-1 or even 9-0. There's definitely the Adelaide game. You've got to think that we should's a word I don't like to use in footy, but both the Collingwood and the Geelong game, there were opportunities there to win it. So that's perhaps a positive that we're not highlighting enough. That we've really been in absolutely every game, even the ones that we have lost.
yeah. So far, I mean, it is a 9-game sample size. The floor that we are displaying has risen from years gone by. And that's the mark of a team trying to find consistency. I'm
Yeah,
optimistic about what I'm seeing. This is the best Carlton side I've ever watched. It says a lot about what I've watched, but this is like they've gone far beyond what I've ever seen in my lifetime with memory. I mean, I don't remember the mid '90s. I was too young. So this is that team where I'm like, yeah, I've got belief. I'm going to get right behind them. I believe in what they're doing. I believe we're on the way. I don't think we're there clearly, but I believe that we're on the way. I'm sort of able to ride the bumps, and like I know a loss is coming at some point. Like I know they're coming. It just, I guess,
sure.
depends on how you lose, and if your losses are, yeah, I think you just touched on it. There hasn't been a touch with a bad loss where you think, like our structure is nowhere near it here.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been moments in games where I've thought that, but we haven't had an entire game of being completely outclassed from start to
Yeah.
finish. It's interesting what you say about consistency and the best Carlton team that you've watched, because I believe this team's best is the best Carlton that I've watched. The best Carlton team that I can remember is the 2000 team, and when I reflect on the difference between those two teams, it is consistency. That
Uh-huh.
that team won 13 in a row, and of those 13 in a row, it spifflicated the sides that it was meant to do that to. It would play a bottom 6 side and it would beat it by 10 goals, and the game would be over halfway through the second quarter. We don't do that. We just haven't done that to anyone really. And I would like to see us do that a bit more, and then that'll turn into playing an 8th place team and beating them the whole way through, and the game's over at 3/4 time, and then it turns into being able to put Melbourne away 10 minutes into the last quarter just with professionalism and ruthlessness. So that's the next step.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some individuals, maybe some votes. Any particular performances you wanted to highlight? And those of you in the chat as well, if you want to give a 3 and a 2 and a 1, please go. Feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I know who my 3 players are, and I'm a little bit unsure on their order. Um, I mean, at halftime, I really thought Wiedering was playing one of the best backman's game I've seen. He was just everywhere. He was on the ground, he was in the air, he was directing traffic, and he had a real endeavor about him, which I think set the tone. He moved out of it a little bit in the second half. So Wiedering, Walsh, and Cripps are my 3, and I think probably Cripps over the 4 quarters gets the 3 for me. Walsh gets the 2, and then 1 to Wieders.
Yeah. Wieders did this spin move
Yeah.
in traffic and hit up Harry Mackay. I mean, he's so talented, and
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you make of the talk around unleashing him a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, what more unleashing does he need than what we saw in that first half? Because
Yeah.
that's the best Jacob Wiedering, because he was being unleashed, unless, like, I guess what people mean by that is he was being attacking, but he was
Yeah.
also being incredibly defensive.
Yeah.
I think there is a little bit of, hey, if we got Marchbank right, and I'm sure we'll talk about, how Marchbank went on the weekend in the VFL and things like that. Is it possible that Marchbank plays more of a shutdown role and that gives Wiedering the ability to roam a bit more? After what I saw on Friday, I don't know if that should be the goal. I really don't. But yeah, it was an incredible game, an incredible first half.
Yeah. The other part to the story was, for me, he wasn't in my votes, but or maybe he should be. Alex Chincotta
Yeah.
and his game and what he's done to back up what he did the week before against Bobby Hill. You get a performance like that, and then I'm saying to myself, wow, this will allow Zach Williams, when he's back in the team, to not have to focus as much on locking down an opponent and to play to his strengths, which is his running and carrying ability, and his kicking and his dare and his dash. So, but the issue is, like, you can't drop Boyd, you can't drop Chincotta.
Yeah.
I think Kemp, I think he's fine. I think he's going along just fine. It's like, where are you going to find the space?
Yeah.
And we haven't even got Sard back yet.
Yeah, well, that's the one I was about to mention. So when they're all available, we've got a bit of a headache, a good headache to have. I think something that I've just loved about Chincotta's work is that the back line at times this year has appeared, and I'm sure they're not, but it's just appeared a bit casual.
Mm,
Just not as desperate as perhaps it's needed to be. He has brought a level of desperation that I think has set the tone, and he did it against Collingwood, and then he did it against Melbourne. And it just takes a few acts, and he's a pretty mean-looking dude, and he's feisty, and the job that he did on Cozzy, yeah, I think we have to have that particular type of backman in, that really sort of lockdown mongrel backman. Boyd's obviously the smooth mover and the beautiful user of the ball coming out. Sard's got that run and dash, and so does Williams. So of those four, and then Newman is, Newman's in there as well. So I really, I was thinking before I came on that, is there a different role for one of them? Is there a potential for one of them to move a little bit higher up the field and play a different role there? I think there might have to be if we want all five in the team.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can just tell what it looks like when you've got defenders there who you can trust to get their job done. Like, you didn't have to worry as much about Chincotta. I'm sure that would have filled Wiedering with confidence, knowing he maybe didn't have to hedge as much when he positioned himself in that back 50, maybe McGovern as well, to know that, yeah, you've got a teammate, he's isolated. They're going to try and get the ball to his opponent, and know that your guy's going to get the job done because you
Yeah.
trust him. It looks so different.
It really does. I mean, and you could argue that, I mean, not argue, I think it's clear that the presence of McGovern in particular, but McGovern and
Yeah.
Chincotta, that allowed Wiedering to do what he did. He felt, okay, I can actually play the way I want to play tonight, rather than, am I going to have to peel off and help out over here?
Mm. Yeah.
Interesting question
Also,
in the chat. Sorry,
yeah.
Terry, about
Yeah.
who's going to cover for Chera, and just to loop it into what we're talking about now. I mean, if Williams is available, is there a role for Williams higher up the ground? We keep the defensive structure of what we had against Melbourne, and try to play Williams a little higher up the ground. Potentially takes the pressure off him in these scenarios where it's one-on-one deep in our defense, and he's found himself in that spot a few times. I don't know if he's got the tank for it right now, but it could be nice just to give him a little bit, be a bit freer up in the middle.
No doubt. Well, yeah, we spoke about, so last night we did the rating show. Pommy and I we had the heat maps up, it's always
Mm.
interesting to watch how they change from week to week. We saw Cheras, we saw when he went off, and that was the question we posed. So, the options are you've got Zach Williams, you've got maybe you bring a Cunningham in and you rotate it together with Elijah and Cunningham. It just feels like we've got to do something to play to Zach Williams' strength. But at the same time, I think it is important that he buys into the defensive side of the game and earns the right, so to speak. It's not a bad show.
It's not our job to make a spot for him, is it? Like the coaches are not going to do that. But in saying that, it's a very particular moment, but that entry into the 50 against Fremantle where Charlie marked it with one hand.
Yeah.
I would love to see him doing a bit more of that. If we can get him into that position on the ground, that would be awesome.
Well, he breaks lines, he takes the game on, he puts speed on the ball, and he enters the ball deep when he kicks it inside 50. So, and we're playing at the SCG coming up. So, decisions, big decisions.
Indeed.
Any other? Also, Pommy did an interview with Alex Chincotta. So if you haven't watched that, great interview. Went up at 6 p.m. tonight. Check it out after the show or after the Almost Blues Brothers. They're on at 8 p.m. It's so important to have humble, hardworking players who have done it the hard way in your football club, particularly when you have a group like ours with a lot of high draft picks and a lot of talent.
Yeah, and I think his story and his patience this year in particular, getting back into the team, and then when you have to wait that long, they're all professionals, so I'm sure it's not like this, but there must be some frustration about like, hey, I played in a prelim final last year. We were on our way to a grand final, and I would have been in that grand final team, and then you don't play for the first however many weeks this year, and then he comes in and straight away has an impact. I really like that. I think it shows a lot about his character.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Any other themes, issues that came out of this game, or just general thoughts about what's happening with the group at the moment before we move on?
I didn't think he didn't, completely blow the house away, but I thought I've really been impressed with Cowan's influence on games and just the role he's played. And something, it's, again, very specific. Every time Cowan gets the ball and he goes to kick it, God, he can get some meterage. He's the type of bloke that even if he just mongrel punts it, can get it 55, 60 meters. I feel that's invaluable. I just feel like his physicality and his willingness to go forward. I'll be honest, he would have been probably in my best 22. I would have thought I would have maybe had him maybe 28th or 29th at the start of the year. Right now, I really like what he's doing. So that's really surprised me how well he's playing.
Yeah. There was seemingly not much about him in the preseason to look at or read about. He seemed to have flown under the radar a bit. And then before you know it, like he's in the side. And I was very curious to see what he looked like in year 2. That's the other thing as well. I think Ollie Hollands is the reason why I'm going to bring this up. But I feel like a player comes into the league, first year, you get a pass. You're a first-year player. But I feel like as soon as that first year is over, you do not get that pass anymore. And you're almost forgotten about as a younger player. I think Ollie had a few moments where, he got taught a lesson by, he played on one of the better wings in the comp in Ed Langdon. Didn't think he was poor. Thought he was actually pretty good in what he had done. But for some reason, we have this impatience with a second-year player, and we forget that he's still a second-year player.
Yeah, it's a bit of a reoccurring theme, and I know that Wiedering spoke about this a lot. Like his first year was a really good year, and then his second year found it really difficult. And maybe it's just that we expect the progression of these players to be linear, and it just isn't. Every now and then you get a freak where it is. Like I think Walsh is the exception to the rule. Like every year it's felt like he's got better and better and better. But for the most part, in the first year, you're just happy that they do anything productive. And if they make a mistake, you just sort of, oh, well, they're going to learn. Second year, you sort of, it's like they're straight away elevated to the same level of criticism that everyone else gets elevated to. And it's pretty harsh. I actually thought Ollie started the game incredibly well.
Yeah.
He got caught holding the ball 3 times. The last one, I'm not going to say it wasn't his fault, but he got given a handball where almost every player would have been caught holding the ball because he was giving it to it with someone coming off his blind side. The other two, he just took one too many steps, and I think he'll learn from that. It was frustrating because of how intense the game was, but I definitely wouldn't be looking to change anything about the way Ollie plays, apart from, hey, that extra step could cost you. Just be mindful of it.
Yeah, no doubt. So that is that. That was round 9. That's it. I'm going to move on. All right.
Doesn't get any easier this week.
Oh, this was the other point as well. We spoke about it last night. So every team in the comp, based on the way the fixture is, will have this stretch where they'll play like 3 games in 12 days. This was ours. This was the third game in the 12 days. We're the first team to win it. So the D's lost to the Lions at the MCG, fell away completely in that fourth. The Saints lost to the Dogs, completely fell away. Ross Lyon spoke about it in his presser. And then the Pies lost to the Saints in that exact same situation. We get the 8-day break now. We do lose Adam Chera. I don't know if we're going to lose Mark Pitternet or if he's just going to put a glove on and get back on with it. Haven't heard about him and what happens there. But yeah, I think that was another part of the story that's important. Like we were clinging on for dear hope at the end.
Yeah, I mean, when we lost Chera and when we were able to bring Hewitt into the game, you can probably not say that, oh, well, we ran out of legs because we had to use our rotation early. It's more who we lost. Chera's that powerful runner, and in those conditions, he's both inside and out. Mind you, I thought Hewitt was okay when he came on. Geez, I'd love to have Pito in the side this week. I'd really love to have Pito on the side. Small ground, hostile environment. He's a real leader when it comes to those physical contests, which this is going to be. I don't know anything about it, apart from he did it and kept playing, but that doesn't tend to mean much. A lot of players just finish out games once they've done something and still miss the next week. So haven't heard an update yet.
Yeah. Well, I went to training on Sunday morning. A few notes that I took down from the day. Charlie and Cripps were managed. They didn't take part in much of the session at all. I did see McGovern, Motlop, Wiedering, Akers. Also, I think Jack Martin was also in this like side group. To be fair, the main session wasn't a really intense session, so not much to read into there. I saw Sard, though. I saw him with the main group for the first 30, maybe 45 minutes. And it got me excited because I thought, all right, well, he's done the warm-up. All right, cool. Then he's partaking in like the main drills again for another 30 minutes. So I don't know if he's ready to go this week, but to see him back with the main group, he then moved to the side group in the skill session for the last maybe 20 minutes, half an hour-ish. He can't be too far away. What was the other thing?
Motlop, how is Motlop walking?
Motlop was doing light laps of the ground.
That's interesting because about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I thought that Motlop would be the earlier of the two to return out of him and Sard, but maybe it sounds the other way around. I always had pegged that Sard would be back after this game because I remember thinking he's going to miss this tough stretch entirely. Yeah, geez, I mean, I'd love to have him back. Such an important player, and felt his absence less against Melbourne, but definitely felt it against Collingwood and Geelong.
Definitely felt it against Collingwood and Geelong. Yeah, I just want to get up last week's injury report so I can see what it said last week. It was interesting because Martin came back after it said 1 to 2 weeks away or 2 to 3 weeks away. So the 7th of May, which was 6 days ago, we had Fogarty 2 to 4 weeks away. We had Motlop 1 to 2 weeks away. Sard 3 weeks away. So that was last week. Marchbank was a test last week. He played in the VFL. What we know about Sydney so far is that Tom McCartan won't play. That's about all I know.
Yeah, so he's been ruled out with concussion protocol still, hey?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you never really want to wish the opposition players are injured or anything like that. But that's we definitely need the forwards to fire. And interestingly, probably Harry's been working super hard, but I thought he was probably kept as quiet as he's been against Melbourne. I was really impressed with Charlie's ability to dig in and just fight through what admittedly was a pretty slow start and had a few clangers, but he's shown time and time again that he'll keep at it. It would be nice if one of them really got a hold of Sydney. I feel like I say that against every opposition each week, but there's an opportunity there with McCartan out.
Yeah. Have you watched much of Sydney?
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces of them, and I can only say good things. Really, they seem really complete. The way I would describe them, and I'm sure someone could take me to task on this, is they feel like a combination of GWS and Geelong. They can do this skillful transition, but then I just feel like they stick to the basics really well in terms of getting back in defence and just super consistent over 4 quarters. The way that that's what impressed me about Geelong. I just felt like their output was exactly the same for all 4 quarters, and we were the ones varying up and down. So I think to beat them, we're going to have to play 4 quarters. And we just can't turn the ball over in the middle of the ground, which I know sounds obvious because that's the case in every game. But on that postage stamp of a ground, you turn it over in the middle of the ground, and basically it's a potentially a shot on goal if you turn it over.
Shot on goal almost every time.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to be careful with that, and that's why I would love Sard in, because that use off the half back is going to be really, really important, and he breaks the lines. You know, he'll take a bounce and then kick it long, and that will put it beyond being a shot at goal if it goes to a contest rather than straight to one of our men. So. Yeah, they're going to be a tricky opponent for sure. One thing I will say is that I don't feel like their forward line, or at least their tall forwards, are incredibly potent. So that's perhaps an area of the ground where we can look to get an advantage as well.
Yeah. Well, there's an assumption that Cincotta will take Papley, so there's one key matchup. Any others? I think some people in the chat are talking about Nick Blakey.
Yeah, Nick Blakey, God, does that guy like to run and bounce? I mean, that defensive forward role is really interesting. I know he's not probably the right size, but on the ground, if he was in the team, I'd almost give that job to Fogarty and just his pressure. So I don't quite know who we'd use right now in our forward line who's been applying that pressure. It's not the right task for Durden, and Durden hasn't been in great form, admittedly, but even if he was, I don't think it's the right task for him. Yeah, that's a good shout, and it's an interesting one. I'm not too sure who would go to him.
Is it a Cottrell?
Maybe Cottrell? Yeah, I was just thinking Cottrell. It's probably not really the role he normally plays, but he hasn't been super involved the last 2 or 3 weeks, Cotters. So maybe this is when a player's, I wouldn't say he's out of form, but he hasn't had his best game. His GWS game was outstanding, and then he's had probably 3 quiet weeks. So maybe this is how you get a player like that back involved. Hey, Cotters, we got a job for you today, and that is weld yourself to Nick Blakey and don't leave his side. Yeah, if you can stop that run, that'd be really paramount. And then I know you guys talked about it on the ratings last night, but Errol Goulden, one of the best players in the game, one of the best wingmen in the game. That use is so elite. Do we just go with one of our wingmen, Ollie or Blake, and say, hey, head to head, do what you need to do? You know, when they've got it, run after him. When we've got it, try and get free. Or do we actually try and lock down on him?
Yeah, so important that ball doesn't spill out easy for the Swans this week. Because once that gets on the outside, the way Errol positions himself, and they know the ground so well, it could be lethal.
So let's say Pitto's not available. What are we doing there?
Well, Tom De Koning has to rise to the occasion.
He definitely does. But who? Yeah, I mean,
and Harry. Then you start seeing De Koning and Harry. I personally think Williams must play.
Okay.
I think what I saw from, I think he looked a little sore He's had quite a few games now this season where he's played. I thought he looked a little bit sore, not dissimilar to what Ollie Hollands looked like.
Mm,
And I thought Ollie looked really fresh against the
he
D's.
he
And I
did look fresh.
and I dare say that a week off would have done Williams a great service. So I mean, it was a glute soreness. I saw on Twitter that it was a groin. I still don't exactly know what he has done or what he did do. He did train on Sunday, looked to be moving freely, no strapping anywhere. He does have the token strap underneath his knee, under the
Yeah.
patellar tendon. But I just think he's, the best of Zach Williams, that is going to be an important factor to beating the Swans. That's why I really want to see him in. I think he's an important piece this week.
Yeah, you can almost picture him now getting that ball on the defensive side of the center circle and then running his measure and then kicking long to a super dangerous position like that. If he did that twice a quarter type thing, that's going to go a long way to beating the Swans.
Yeah.
I think the other player for Sydney, and this is the nature of a good team, they're littered with stars, is by all accounts, Isaac Heaney's, got about 77 votes in the Brownlow right now. I haven't watched him that closely, but he's great in the air, but it just feels like Walshy is the right head-to-head with him. Walshy will pay him the respect he deserves and also run the other way. And he's in pretty bloody good form himself. So maybe that's the one where we do say, hey, we're going to go head-to-head here and see how that goes.
Thank you, Huss. Welcome to Blue Abroad membership, mate. Yeah. So Chera's going to come out. Pitto, maybe. Who would you bring in?
Well,
Chat
I think
as well?
I think based on what you're saying, even though it's not like for like, I'd say Williams isn't in.
Yeah. Hewitt elevated from sub.
Yeah, but then I know your next question is going to be who's the sub, and I tell you, it's sure as hell is not Kennedy ever again, please.
No, I know, right?
Yeah, actually, I don't know if anyone was sitting where I was sitting, but when Kennedy was having a ripper second quarter and he kept getting the ball, and some bloke behind me goes, "Who's that bloke? He'd make a hell of a sub." And the whole bay around us started laughing. I think it was just a testament to no one agreeing with the sub from last week. But I just saw in the chat Durden as sub, and I can probably get along with that as in terms of the form he's in. And then the other person who played quite well last week in the VFL is Marchbank. Is there a matchup for him in this Sydney team though?
I mean, Marchie would probably be in for like a Cowan, right?
Yeah, you would think so, but
you go for the experience. Not that Cowan's done much wrong, but also, I mean, Caleb Marchbank, if he's fit and available, you're probably playing him. Just looking at it now. So, I mean, this is the way the forward line was named for the Swans last week.
Yeah, I'm
James
looking at
Gordon,
that too.
McDonald, Taylor Adams, Will Hayward, Joel Amati, Tom Papley, Hayden McLean, Sam Wicks on the bench there. So
you've got to assume that Wiedering goes to Amati. That sort of feels like the logical matchup, or is there someone else?
Amati or McDonald, whoever plays deep.
Mm-hmm. I mean, with Marchie, I've just found, and at some point we're going to have to bring him in, but it does feel like he takes a game or two at AFL level to get his confidence.
Yeah.
So again, we can't do things just to accommodate our players, but is this the right environment to expose him to straight away? He's played one game this year. He got knocked out in it pretty much. Is that the right way to bring him in?
It's interesting. Yeah, it is. Yeah, guys, you're right. It is a Sir Douglas Nichols round. This is the Guernsey. This also kind of tells me that Zach Williams is going to play.
Yeah. We're unlikely to wheel him out for that promo and not play.
Yeah, there's a few elements at play. It's a beautiful Guernsey. I believe it's his family. I believe a family member of his did the artwork. It was his cousin, Stuart James, who did the artwork for the Guernsey this year. So
I really like that. I feel like there's a bit more navy in that than the previous one, and
yeah,
I really like it.
yeah, I saw a bit of a mixed review. I thought it was a little bit too light blue in the years gone by, whereas this year they held the navy blue in there.
Yeah, I also think I get a little bit jaded by the results that I see in those Guernseys. Like, I think all those Guernseys objectively look great, and I love them. But if we go through some heartbreaking loss in it, I'm just like, oh, I don't want to see that Guernsey again.
You've just triggered a memory of mine. We played Gold Coast. We wore the white version of the Guernsey. I think they came in, and I think that was the infamous "the Blues are back."
Well, I mean, an amazing cause that we should really proudly be behind as a club is Carlton Respects, but I don't think we've ever won wearing those orange socks.
No,
I
not one.
seriously don't think we've ever won wearing those orange socks. So anyway, it's a good looking jumper. So I think Williams is playing, and I would probably like to see, this would be the ideal scenario on Thursday for me. Teams come out, Chera out, Williams in, and that's it. I think that's about all I'd want to see. Yeah, don't need to change what isn't broken. Let's be confident in what we produced for basically 3.5 quarters of last week, and know that this group can do that again. I don't think anything else needs to change too much. If Saad was available, that does change things because I'd get him in, but I don't.
He's that type of player, isn't he? Where if he is available, he has to play.
That's right. Yeah, you're making way for Saad. I can see Jordan's just said Motlop, and if Motlop was available, but it doesn't sound like he is based off what you saw on Sunday, Terry. If Motlop was available, I'd probably do a straight swap for Durden at the moment.
Yeah, Jordan, I was at training. I'm not sure if you've just joined us. I was at training on Sunday, and he didn't look like he was doing anything more than just laps. Didn't seem to be getting out of doing them with much pace. So maybe that's just the management part of his rehab. But yeah, I don't know. Saad's different. Saad's an intelligent player who knows how to cut angles, and he's so reliable down there.
Gavin's just highlighted he beat me to the punch. Because I was just sort of thinking, if Motlop's not available, then does Durden stay? But Cunners, I thought Cunners was serviceable against Collingwood. Yes, he got beaten the other way at times, but it's always difficult to bring a player in for one game and then drop them. You have to do it sometimes, but I'd be okay with that too if it was Cunningham, Williams in, Durden, Chera out. That'd sit fine with me as well.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Predictions, storylines to emerge. How do you see it playing out?
I can't see it being anything but close, unfortunately.
I know, right? Yeah.
It's just going to be this uncomfortably sort of hold on to the side of the couch type thing. But I think something I've been incredibly proud of in this group, and we've managed to do this throughout the last 2 or 3 years as a group, is just when it looks like the opposition is going to skip away, they show this ticker and this belief and this willingness to, no, we're not going away. We're going to hang around. And I'm imagining at some point throughout this, they're going to have pretty solid momentum. The crowd's going to be loud. Their runners will be involved. And it just sort of feels like, okay, it's not our night. They're going to skip away. And then, the leadership of Walsh and Cripps, they get us back into it. And that's what makes you proud. If we can scout. I mean, I think Pommy said this last night. If we win this week, and I think we're every chance to win, the narrative, especially if we do it on a Friday night, God, get ready for it. It's going to be all about Carlton for a few days.
Yeah. Well, so there's a few elements when I think about the game. So firstly, there's an interesting part about where I'm seeing where we're at the moment. We play better at the moment when there is that seed of doubt. When they're all over us and they're saying they've arrived and the like, we don't have the same edge compared to when there's a bit of doubt or where there's a bit of some injury concern where we're missing a few, key players and, we need to, step up our game. We play well. I went to the SCG game last year, and maybe I shouldn't read too much into it because, they're two different sides now, but I do remember distinctly a few things that I think we can rectify this week. I remember how well we moved the ball in that first half against the Swans, generated really good looks, just didn't convert. Charlie kicked 1 goal 3. Harry was probably experiencing one of the peaks of his, or the troughs, I should say, the low point of his, lost confidence. He kicked 0 goals 3. I just can't see that happening again.
No, neither can I. And we've actually, as hard a place as it is to win, I can remember a few famous victories for us at the SCG. I can also remember a few times. I remember when Buddy he must have kicked 10 or something and took us to the cleaners. But I'll never forget, actually, it was a Friday night game too, a wet game in 2011. A lot of people say it's one of Juddy's best games in a Carlton Guernsey. He just dragged us. Aiden's just said it there, 2011 Judd. That memory, along with, I reckon I'll say 18, when we were not good, we managed to win by maybe 7 points on a Saturday arvo. Just sort of like, one of those wins that shouldn't happen type thing, and we managed to do it. So it's not even in our darkest years, it hasn't been the most unhappy hunting ground. It's not an Adelaide Oval or something like that. So yeah, I'd love a win.
A win would be wild. I'll be home. I'll be in Melbourne. I'm not making the trip. I'm not risking the record. So fan cams this week will happen as soon as the boys sing the song. So those of you watching at home, as soon as the boys sing the song, we'll go live to the fan cams and we'll have post-game content straight away for you. So that's exciting. I'm excited to watch a game on TV. I like the balance. Like, I love going to the footies, nothing like it, but I also do appreciate watching it on TV sometimes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's the last 3 weeks, and there's nothing better than going to the G. But the last 3 weeks have been, a real emotional sort of build up to an MCG, massive game. So it'll be nice to sit back and you said you wanted your prediction, a prediction. I got a prediction for you.
Okay.
I reckon Charlie catches fire this week. I reckon he'll kick 6 plus. I just reckon he's due for a night where everything's going his way. And yeah, I think it's time. I think that'll get us across the line.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. I mean, we are coming out of a period of time where we're playing against elite defensive structures.
Mm-hmm.
Geelong and Melbourne in particular. You could say the Pies as well. The way that they defend.
Yep.
So Charlie's played against the best defenders. So yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Shock the world, beat the Swans, and then all of a sudden, isn't it funny? 2 weeks ago, last week before we had played the Ds, you're sort of looking at this patch of 5 games against the 5 best, and you're saying, if we can win one of the next 2, all of a sudden we're 2-2 going into this one. How much of a difference does being 3-2 and 2-3 make to you in that patch?
I haven't considered this patch so much, but I think if we come out of the first 10 rounds, given that we've literally played the top of the ladder team a few times because of the way the things have shuffled, and we're 7-3, I don't think many teams would be 7-3 if we can get over the line this weekend. I know I keep saying should, but 7-3 really, when you look at the Adelaide game, should be 8-2. It'd be a really good first 10 rounds if we get over the line this weekend.
Absolutely. All right. Well, look forward to that. If anybody is in Sydney or has tickets and they're not going to be there and they would like to make sure that those tickets go to Carlton supporters, please get in touch. Send me a message. I'm happy to facilitate the giveaway of the ticket. If you're selling them, you're on your own, do your own thing. But if you want to give your tickets away, we can spin the wheel on the team show on Thursday. Get in touch. Footy Abroad tomorrow, 8 p.m. It'll be the three of us, Luke, Jake, and I. We'll be doing the fan cams as well, so feel free to call in. Ed, what's happening with YouTube and you, mate? How's it all going?
Mate, it's going great. It's a ritual after the game to just get my thoughts out of my head and on paper, and got a loyal band of small followers who always let me know what they think, good, bad, or otherwise, and it's just great to be able to bounce ideas off Carlton people.
Amazing. Ed Bleeds Blue on YouTube, ladies and gents. If you haven't checked Ed out, go and check him out. Otherwise, mate, thanks for being here. We're about to wrap up, and the Almost Blues brothers will start shortly. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Indeed, mate. Thanks for having me.
Go Blues.
Go Blues.